Hey everyone, this is Ashley with CT Marina Digitals. I'm going to show a tutorial. I had this cow print newborn backdrop in my Etsy shop, and I've had a lot of people asking about the composite my composite I did with the cowboy hat. So I actually I made an overlay for the hat, and I'm going to add that to the listing. I'm going to look through my orders, and anybody that's already ordered the backdrop, I'll just reach out to them to see if they want the hat overlay since it wasn't included in their order. But I wanted to also do a quick tutorial, maybe not so quick, I'm not sure, to show how to use it. I'm also just going to do the composite tutorial as well since I haven't done one in a while. So this is just the baby. I pretty much he was already in a bowl. It was a very similar brown layer like the one in the photo. You always want to shoot baby on at least the same color layer that you're planning to use for your digital backdrop. He was already in a bowl. I just went to my quick selection and did my select subject tool and used my plus and minus up here to just make sure that I selected everything I wanted. I went up to edit and copy, and then I went to edit and paste into the backdrop. The light is coming from this side. The light is coming from this side on the baby, so you can either flip the baby or you can flip the backdrop. If you're doing this for a client, I highly suggest that you flip the backdrop because flipping the baby is literally going to flip all its features and it's not going to be true. But for tutorial purposes, I am not doing this for a client, so I am going to just flip the baby because that's how I have it shown on my Etsy shop already. And then I'm going to resize. I'm going to make sure this button up here is selected because I want to keep my proportions. I'm going to turn him because the light's coming from like this angle right here. I'll click OK. I'm going to go up to my adjustments and I'm going to add some contrast. I'm going to click this button right here so it only goes on the baby and not the backdrop. Add my contrast there. I'm going to bring down the brightness just a little bit on him. I'm going to add a levels layer. Click that button again for the clipping mask. I'm going to add some shadows in there. I'm going to click on him and I'm going to go to my burn tool. Make sure shadows is selected up here. And my exposure is about 27%. I'm going to add some shadows to his feet and the side of his face, only because the shadows in the bowl are so deep and dark. Now I'm going to merge all these layers, these three. I'm going to go to my options down here and I'm going to do drop shadow. I want this angle right here to be where the light is falling on the backdrop. I want it to be a dark color that's in the bowl. So if you select right here, I'd select like right here for the dropper. Click OK. Multiply blending mode, 100% opacity. Distance I typically do all the way up for my newborn ones, but I play around with it. Size, I leave spread all the way down. Size, all the way up. If you want to play with the distance, like you don't really want too much shadow on here if it's like way off. But I'm happy with that. So before and after, see that it looks like he's actually laying in the bowl now because it wouldn't make sense if there wasn't any shadows there. Okay, so I also I would go in and create a layer mask on him and clean up any edges that I needed to clean up, but I have him selected pretty good already. I would, where the fuzz is on his arm, I would black brush 100% opacity. I would brush that off, or not 100%, I'm sorry, I didn't want to do that. Probably like 30. Just so it kind of more so matches the layer that's already in there. And then I'm going to click on my background layer and duplicate it. I'm going to go over my blur tool and I'm going to blur the layer in here because if there were a baby in it, this layer would not be completely in focus. The edges, I'm going to leave those. I'm just going to blur what's underneath him. And then if you need to, I could click on him and I could blur the edges of him a little bit more to blend it more. This would be so much harder if he was on a different colored layer, but it's actually quite easy once you do it on a similar layer. Okay, so that's my baby composite. I'm happy with that. I might go in and like add like a couple extra, like use my burn tool and add like a little extra like shadow to parts of his outfit and stuff, just because it's like there's such rich shadows in this digital. Okay. So I'm going to create a new layer and merge those two just because I want just the baby. Like I'm done with that for now. I'm not going to merge the baby in the background just yet. I'm going to come over to my cowboy hat, select all, edit, copy, and edit and paste into my image. I'm going to drag and resize. Just like his head sticking out here, that's all going to be edited. I just want to get it at the right angle, and I want to get it in the right position on his head to where his head isn't really sticking out. And now as you can see, like if we keep our proportions, I just want to pull this side a little bit. I don't want the whole hat to get bigger. So I want the hat to be about this size. So I'm gonna click on one of these boxes, it doesn't matter which one. This little tool up here, that's gonna allow me to pull certain spots of the image and drag them. That way I am not making just a huge hat. I'm gonna pull this down a little bit. I'm gonna pull these sides in. And then click that check mark box. And even that is like, I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller, and I'm gonna drag that piece again right there. Okay, so now I'm gonna zoom back out. The lighting is coming from the right way on that, so I don't have to worry about that. I'm going to add a gradient to the hat just to give it a little bit more shadow on the side that I want shadow. So I'm going to do a new layer. I'm going to right click it and click create clipping mask. I'm going to go over to my gradient tool, make sure it's black to white, and I'm going to drag black to white, and then I'm going to change the blending mode to soft light. And then I'm going to lower the opacity to about 50%. As you can see, that kind of just made it a little bit darker over here, but I don't want this I don't want this right here. You could do like a transparent layer too and just add the shadow. But I already had that, my black and white selected, so I'm gonna leave that and just brush off this spot over here. Because I could have used the burn tool too. Like if I would have just clicked on the hat, I'm gonna merge these two layers real quick. And use my burn tool. I could have just added shadows that way too, but a gradient's another way to do that. I'm gonna add a levels layer and click that button for the clipping mask. I'm gonna add a little bit more shadow. I want it to match my backdrop and the baby. Okay, so I'm happy with the tone and the color and the shadows and everything on the hat. Now we need to add shadow on the baby because there's going to be shadow from the light coming down on the hat. So I'm going to create a new layer above the baby. I would want it to be on the backdrop too, so I'm not going to create a clipping mask. I'm going to change the blending mode to multiply on that layer. Go over to my brush. I'm going to hold down my Alt key on my keyboard, and I'm going to select a dark part of the baby's face. And I'm going to start at about 15% opacity. Make my brush so it's just falling off onto his forehead. And I'm going to slowly brush in that shadow. Now it came down a little bit further than I wanted to, so I'm going to create a clipping mask, black brush at 100% opacity, and I'm just going to brush that off just a tiny bit. So you can see that added a nice shadow from the hat that would be there realistically if that's how we did the composite. I want to add a little bit of shadow right here too, but I didn't want to put it with that whole big shadow. So I'm going to add another layer, multiply blending mode, and then I'm going to use a little bit smaller of a brush, and I'm going to, whoops, change my opacity to 15 again, and then just brush in some shadow right there. Okay, I think that looks good. And now my hat is going to be like very in focus because it's a brand new layer and it's not blended in. So I'm going to click on my hat, I'm going to go to my blur tool and lower my brush down a little bit, and I'm going to blur the edges. See how that just like made it blend right into the photo. Okay, I'm going to merge my hat and my any layers that I did to my hat. I'm going to merge those together. I'm going to go down here and add a drop shadow again because I want to show you something. So if I would have done like drop shadow, you can use in some cases. I don't like to do that because I don't like to mess around with having to correct it where I don't want it. So again, I'm just going to create a layer above the background. I'm going to add a new layer, multiply blending mode. About 15% opacity is fine. I'm going to hold down my Alt key and I'm going to select that dark part of the bowl this time because that's where I'm painting it. And I need to add shadow right here. On the other side of that hat. And add a little bit right there too. Okay. And I think that looks good. It's cute. If you want to like warp the hat a little bit more, you could also, if you click on your hat, you could go up to filter and liquify. And you could kind of bring in the edges and mess with the hat that way too. If you wanted this to tip up a little bit, like that's another way you could do that. But that's how I use it. That's how people were asking how I composited it in, and I will now include this in the backdrop as well. If you have any questions, you can message me on Etsy. If you're a studio photographer, you can join my group on Facebook. It's linked in the description.